Hello, I'm Tom Donker. This is BBC News with our top stories. North Korea launches what's thought to be another ballistic missile. President Trump calls for tougher sanctions. After the cyber attack comes the investigation. Europol says Friday's hack was on an unprecedented scale. The hunt is now on for those responsible. France prepares for its new president. Emmanuel Macron's inauguration approaches, but what happens next? And pop shares the stage with politics. Portugal wins the 2017 Eurovision Song Contest. Welcome to the program. The president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in, has condemned the latest missile test by North Korea as a reckless provocation. The US military confirmed that a missile was launched near the northwestern city of Kusong and landed in the Sea of Japan. President Trump has called for stronger sanctions, and Shinzo Abe, the Japanese prime minister, was quick to voice his condemnation.
Once again, North Korea has launched a ballistic missile despite strong warnings from the international community. This is unacceptable. We strongly protest. These repeated North Korean missile launches are a great threat to our nation and a clear breach of the United Nations Security Council resolution.
Well, our correspondent Steve Evans, who's in the South Korean capital, gave us more details about the launch.
We know it wasn't the dud the previous one was. It travelled a goodly distance, about 400 miles, 700 kilometres. The previous one went virtually no distance. North Korea is launching and testing missiles pretty well at the rate of one every 2 weeks throughout this year. And about half of them failed. This one clearly didn't. But it does seem that whatever threats or inducements come from Seoul and Washington in particular, the missile program proceeds unabated, and that will clearly raise questions, particularly in Seoul, where there's a new president, not been in power for a week yet, but he came in promising or threatening, depending on your point of view, a more conciliatory line towards Pyongyang. So we wait to see what President Moon makes of all this and how tough his statement is and how much his action may be tougher than his pre-election promises indicated.
And Steve, all this happened not long after a North Korean diplomat but Donald Trump appeared to say that they were open for diplomatic talks. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't make too much of that. If you ask anybody pretty well, are you prepared to talk about something? They'll say, yeah, sure, we'll talk if the conditions are right. So the key phrase in that, it seems to me, is if the conditions are right. President Trump has said he would talk, he'd be honored to talk to Pyongyang if the conditions are right. The North Korean diplomat, a nuclear negotiator, she said she'd be prepared, or North Korea would be prepared to talk if the conditions are right. The conditions to be right would have to be something like, for the US, that the North Korea nuclear arsenal was on the table to be negotiated away or certainly limited in some way. And there's absolutely no suggestion, in public anyway, that that may be so. Now, there are what are called Track 2 talks going on at the moment between Pyongyang and former government officials of the US. The administration says, nothing to do with us, unofficial, we're not talking to them, but you do wonder whether feelers are being put out. Steve Evans there. Security experts around the world are trying to get to grips with the cyber attack which hit computer systems in around 100 countries. Europol, the Agency for Law and Enforcement in the EU, called it unprecedented and warned that a complex investigation was needed to find those responsible. Daniel Sanford has the latest.
The cyber attack which wreaked such chaos in Britain's health service was actually a global assault, affecting Russia worst of all, but also countries as far apart as the US, Australia and Japan. This evening, the two British agencies tackling it said a complex international investigation would be needed to catch the culprits.
We haven't identified the offenders at this moment in time, but we are deploying all covert and overt means available to us, and we have a number of lines of inquiry. It's really important that we pursue those quickly so that we can reassure the public we are taking this very seriously.
At the heart of this global cyber attack was a software worm which spreads itself from computer to computer using code originally designed by a US government spy agency. It's called WannaCrypt, and it simply encrypts all the files on the infected computer and then demands a ransom. By last night, at least 75,000 computers had been infected in at least 74 countries. At that point, a cybersecurity expert managed almost by chance to stop it spreading. But all the data on the infected computers is still unusable until a ransom is paid. Any modern computer that had had its software regularly updated was safe, but some NHS trusts use old operating systems that were particularly vulnerable. Others may have simply failed to take a security update in March. Today, the National Cybersecurity Centre had this simple advice.
The first one is to make sure that your security software patches are up to date. The second is to employ proper, good antivirus software. And the third, and the most important for ransomware protection, is back up your data, because you can't be held to ransom if you've got a backup.
It's been a reminder of how vulnerable vital organisations like health services are to attack by organised criminals seeking to raise money or by hostile states and terrorist groups trying to cause maximum disruption.
The reality is there are thousands of vulnerabilities across all the different software applications that companies and organisations use. So, for example, if we were to look at a company of 50,000 computers, we might find hundreds of thousands of open vulnerabilities on those machines.
It's also a reminder that computers are not a one-off investment. They need to be kept up to date. Daniel Sandford, BBC News.
A train has derailed in northern Greece, killing at least 4 people and injuring 5 others. Pictures from the town of Adendro showed smashed carriages, including one which hit a house. The train came off the rails as it was travelling between Athens and Greece's second largest city, Thessaloniki. Sarah Corker reports.
Part of the express train ended up lodged in the ground floor of a house next to the tracks. Other carriages toppled onto their sides, smashing windows. 5 in total derailed during the incident in northern Greece. 12 fire trucks were involved in the rescue operation, which continued through the night. The train was heading from Athens to Thessaloniki in the north when it derailed near the town of Adendro, 23 miles from its destination. Among the injured is the driver, who is in a critical condition, the rail company said. Dramatic photographs show the scale of the damage. The carriages ripped through overhead cables, and this is where the train's engine finished its journey. One man said he managed to jump off a balcony just before the train hit the house. Most of the 100 passengers were evacuated within 3 hours. It's still unclear what caused the train to come off the tracks. Sarah Corker, BBC News.
The funeral has taken place for the Romanian tourist who was knocked into the River Thames during a terror attack in London 2 months ago. Andreea Cristea was pulled from the water with serious injuries and later died in hospital. Nick Thorpe reports from the funeral in Constanța.
This should have been her wedding. Instead, it was her funeral. Andreea Cristea's family and friends gathered in Constanța to honour a life cut brutally short. She was walking with her boyfriend on Westminster Bridge in London on the 22nd of March, when a car mounted the pavement and hit one pedestrian after another. Andreea was knocked into the Thames. She died 2 weeks later.
My sister was the most amazing person I can imagine in this world, and she was the most happy, and she will be always with us, and she's not gone. She is not physically, but she will be always with us and with her friends.
This was a traditional sung Orthodox ceremony attended by young and old. in the town where Andrea and her fiancé Andre grew up. British diplomats and police officers were also present. Mourners lit candles and the priests burnt incense. And across the street, a day of sadness for all in Romania.
One reason why this death has touched Romanians so deeply is because almost everyone in this country has a personal connection to the United Kingdom. Up to 500,000 people work there. Many others go there on holiday. It could have been almost anyone strolling that day over Westminster Bridge.
From the church, the funeral cortege moved to the Anadal-Chioi cemetery in an old Turkish neighbourhood of the city.
I'm here to be together with Andrea's family and friends at this time of grief, but also to celebrate Andrea's life and to underline that the UK and Romania stand together in the fight against terrorism.
Nearly 2 months after the London attacks, the final victim has been laid to rest at last. Nick Thorpe, BBC News, Constanza.
Emmanuel Macron will be sworn in as the next president of France later. It follows his election victory last weekend, securing 65% of the vote against Marine Le Pen. Mr. Macron, who only formed his political movement a year ago, takes over from Francois Hollande. Hugh Schofield reports from Paris.
A classic Parisian newspaper kiosk and pictures of Monsieur Le Kid, Emmanuel Macron, the man who later today will become France's next president. It's going to be a day of ceremony and tradition here at the Élysée Palace. We can't get any closer than where we are now because of security, but we know that at 10 o'clock in the morning in front of the Élysée, the motorcade of Emmanuel Macron will drive up and he'll be greeted in front by the outgoing president Francois Hollande, and then they'll go in together for a tete-a-tete of half an hour. And that's where various security matters, including, of course, the handing over of the famous nuclear codes, will happen. And then Francois Hollande will leave, and at that point, Emmanuel Macron is the new president. There'll be pageantry with the induction of the new president, as all presidents are, as Grand Master of the Order of the Legion of Honor. There'll be a speech, and there'll be a procession down the Champs-Élysées over there. And that is where the work then begins. And what everyone is going to be looking out for, first of all, is the nomination of Mr. Macron's Prime Minister. Who's it going to be? A man or a woman? Someone of the right? Someone of the left? No one knows. That person's first job is going to be to lead the new government into the parliamentary elections, which happen in June, because that's where Macron needs to get a majority to have a free hand for his programme of reforms. And the other thing, of course, Monday, the first trip abroad to Germany to see Angela Merkel, where, of course, the future of the European Union and Brexit will be top of the agenda.
Stay with us here on BBC World News, still to come. A football farewell. After 118 years, the final whistle for Spurs' spiritual home at White Hart Lane.
The Pope was shot, the Pope will live. That's the essence of the appalling news from Rome this afternoon, that, as an Italian television commentator put it, terrorism had come to the Vatican.
The man they called the Butcher of Lyon, Klaus Barbie, went on trial today in the French town where he was the Gestapo chief in the Second World War.
Winnie Mandela never looked like a woman just sentenced to 6 years in jail. The judge told Mrs. Mandela there was no indication she felt even the slightest remorse.
The Chinese government has called for an all-out effort to help the victims of a powerful earthquake, the worst to hit the country for 30 years.
The computer Deep Blue has tonight triumphed over the world chess champion Garry Kasparov. It's the first time a machine has defeated a reigning world champion in a classical chess match.
America's first legal same-sex marriages have been taking place in Massachusetts.
God bless America!
This is BBC News with the latest headlines. North Korea has launched an unidentified projectile thought to be a ballistic missile. President Trump has urged for tougher sanctions. The police agency Europol has described the cyber attack on computer systems around the world as unprecedented. Prison authorities around the world are increasingly concerned about the use of drones to smuggle illegal goods into jails. But now a cutting-edge defence system has been installed in the Channel Islands in what is the world's first. The Skyfence system takes control of the drone if it gets too close. Mike Wilkins went to Guernsey to see the system in action.
This remarkable footage shows a drone being used to smuggle drugs into a UK prison. It's unclear how big a problem it is. The only drones they catch are the ones that crash. And here in Guernsey, prison chiefs are leading the way in tackling this aerial menace. You're about to see a drone stopped mid-flight. The system hacks the frequency of the drone, halts it, and sends it back to where it came from.
As you can see, it's stopped.
Yeah, it kind of rears up, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. The aircraft's disconnected, and it's into return to home mode. You can no longer see what's coming from the screen.
And drones are getting smaller all the time. Do you think this system could cope if there was a swarm of tiny drones?
Yeah. So as soon as any type of drone is detected, the whole perimeter fence sort of becomes live. So no drones can cross any of the perimeter fence at all.
It's the first prison in the world to be using a drone detecting fence called Skyfence. It's part of a £1.7 million security upgrade, but some of it has come free of charge.
We bought the drone detector package, which told us there was drones within the prison. Didn't actually stop them coming in. And this new technology, which has been introduced, we were offered as an upgrade, and we didn't have to pay for that. The payback hopefully will be that other prisons will come and see it, and both the prison and the company will benefit from that.
The anti-drone system will be activated at the end of next month, and experts tell me that it could also be applied to other places such as airports. Mike Wilkins, BBC News, Guernsey.
It's almost 3 years since violence erupted on the streets of Ferguson in the US state of Missouri. It followed the shooting of Michael Brown, an unarmed black teenager who was killed by a white police officer. An iconic photo during that time showed the unrest of a man throwing a flaming tear gas canister back at the police. Edward Crawford had since been found in his car from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He's been found dead. Howard Johnson travelled to Missouri to speak to the photographer who took the famous image in Ferguson.
So the picture happened pretty much right in the middle of the street. Tactical units were coming this way and people were pulling out of the area. It was probably the third or fourth canister that got fired down this way. He just kind of, reached out to pick it up, and it was, after it was fired, it was sparking. And so he reached down, and as he reached down, some big sparks came out, and he literally just kind of jumped and just to get out of the way, and then went back and picked it up again and just tossed it. And so I went straight back to my car and tried to file. Came back just to check in on Twitter and see what's going on, and everybody is talking about this image. People started sending me artwork. People needed to replicate it. They started doing paintings and drawings. We've seen it on the sides of buildings. The first one I saw was in Massachusetts, in suburban Boston. I saw the most amazing Halloween outfit. It was based on this picture. On top of that, there's some people that feel that it's so important to them that they need to put it on their body. And there's been a flurry of tattoos I've seen pictures of. Then I got to know them, pretty well. We'd get together to talk on occasion, have lunch together on occasion, and just a good guy.
Now, more than 800 children and teenagers who'd lost a parent while serving in the armed forces have attended a garden party at Buckingham Palace. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell has more.
It's a very large garden, accustomed to formal events like garden parties. But it's a perfect place too for a children's party, which is exactly what was happening at Buckingham Palace this afternoon. 800 children had been invited to the palace by the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry for a very special reason. Each of these children has lost a parent serving in the armed forces. One of the children at the palace was Jack Rigby, the 6-year-old son of Fusilier Lee Rigby, murdered by extremists in London 4 years ago. He was with his mother, Rebecca.
It's a chance for the parents to meet each other and to just know that you're in a safe environment, and you know, you can ask advice of the other parents. They've been through things similar to what you have and similar experiences, and they've at different points had to go through the same things as you are, the questions and, you know, the explanations of what's happened. It's just, yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity for both the parents and the children.
The Rigbys met Prince Harry, who was demonstrating the plate spinning. The royals joined in, posing for pictures, entertaining the crowd, and all of it with a serious message.
That we as a family, we as a nation, and we up and down the country will never, ever, ever forget about the sacrifices that every single one of you have made.
What this event does is bring together 3 of the issues in which William, Kate and Harry take a particular interest: young people, the armed forces and bereavement. And for a few hours in the grounds of Buckingham Palace, those wider cares could be put to one side. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News, at Buckingham Palace.
It will be the end of an era in North London later today when Tottenham play their last game of football at White Hart Lane. Spurs have been at the famous stadium for well over a century, as Chris Slegg reports.
White Hart Lane, home to Bill Nicholson's magnificent 1961 team, the first double winners of the 20th century. Then home to great players like Greaves, Ardiles, and Gascoigne, among many others. And right now, home to a team playing some of the best football in England.
This same patch of green in N17 is where generation after generation of fans have come to cheer on their team. The pitch has stayed in almost exactly the same position since 1899. So while there's great excitement about the new stadium taking shape to my left, there's also sadness about leaving White Hart Lane as we know it.
Because it's so close to the pitch, there's a connectivity between the players and the crowd. I don't think you get that at many clubs.
It's quite emotional for me, having been coming over here for over 50 years with my dad when I was small.
I think that it will be a good thing for the club to have a bigger stadium. I think it will attract more fans and get more international recognition.
Demolition will begin straight after Sunday's farewell ceremony. The new stadium, which overlaps the current site, will hold an extra 25,000 fans with a capacity of more than 61,000. Until its scheduled opening next summer, Tottenham will play at Wembley. 1961 double winner Terry Dyson is among the club legends who will be paraded on the pitch after the match against Manchester United.
Well, I think I'll be a bit emotional, especially when I go on the pitch. I think, you know, all those years ago, I performed here, and but like Danny Blanchflower said, they'll never be able to take your memories away.
One of the most evocative stadium names in English football will be missed by many. A naming rights deal worth millions with a sponsor awaits. White Hart Lane will soon be no more. Chris Slegg, BBC News.
Now, in case you missed it, Portugal has won the Eurovision Song Contest for the first time. The BBC's biggest fan, Steve Rosenberg, reports from the contest in Kiev, and a warning, there are some flashing images in Steve's report.
He couldn't believe it, but Salvador Sobral had just won Eurovision. His victory is Portugal's first in the song contest after 49 attempts. As for the song, Amar Peros Dois, his sister wrote it, and it's very un-Eurovision. No gimmicks, no video screens. Just a melancholic melody and his charisma and charm. Bulgaria came second. Portuguese Eurovision fans had been waiting for this moment for such a long time. They'd grown so used to losing that winning sparked plenty of emotion.
Amazing! Amazing! We deserved it! It will be amazing! It's like a dream come true!
Flying the flag for the UK was Lucy Jones. Her power ballad, Never Give Up On You, placed 15th out of 26 songs, our best result for 6 years.
Were you aiming for a particular place?
No, I just didn't want to come last, so actually I did really well. Woo!
And of course, it being Eurovision, there was weird, there was wonderful, and what on earth was this? But perhaps it won't be the music we remember from Eurovision 2017, it's the mischief. During the interval act, a man got up on stage and bared his bottom live on TV. A bum note indeed.
An estimated 200 million people will have watched tonight's Eurovision Song Contest. The show always delivers high ratings. Personally, I wish it could have delivered a few more points to the United Kingdom. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Kiev.
Another memorable night. That's it from me and the team. Goodbye for now.
Hello there.